All right, it's good to go.
Awesome. Welcome to the Tech Talk at the Tech Academy. This week we have Kent Gray joining us, and he works as a service data scientist at Kubota Tractor Company, and he graduated from the Tech Academy in 2016. Last time we had him here, he was just starting his new position, and now he's solidly been there for 6 months. So we'll get to learn about his journey from boot camp grad to data scientist and learn about what he's doing now. So thanks everybody so much for being here, and I will let Kent take it away.
Thank you, Kenzie. Hey everyone, good to meet you, and just know I've been in your shoes at one point, and so it is possible to get from that point to here. So just kind of take you through what I've done and my story, and hopefully have some pointers that may help you, and we'll hopefully have time at the end for questions and anything else. And I can also show you what I do on a daily basis if everyone's still awake at that point. So let me go ahead and switch over. Give it a minute. There we go. All right. Still loading a little bit, but can everyone see that?
We can see it.
Great. Okay. Got some loading issues here. Well, there we go. Okay. Again, my name is Kent, and here's my background. So my background is I had an undergraduate degree in history with a 2.18 GPA. Really bad at math. Not terrible, but not that great. I had gone through multiple jobs. It was pretty directionless most of my career coming out of college. Didn't know what to do. I mean, here's a few jobs I did over the years: oil and gas, tennis, food service, the paralegal, PE teacher. So it was just kind of all over the place. Why do I say that? Because my point is, you can do it if I can. That's my backstory. And then here's where it all began. That's still loading. So in 2015, at that time, I was still a head tennis coach at a public high school. I felt pretty overwhelmed and defeated. This little girl, Katie, right here, she was born in December 2014. And so I was working long days. I was working at 3 different campuses as a PE teacher as well. And felt kind of overwhelmed and didn't see any kind of purpose to what I was doing. So I knew I had to do something different. At that point, I decided to quit coaching, did some research, and stumbled upon the Tech Academy. And after talking about it with my wife, we decided that it'd be good. So I went to Portland for several months to study software development at the time. They didn't have data science at that point, so I just did software development. And even at that point, I didn't know I wanted to do data science. So then I graduated from the Tech Academy in 2016, roughly around early January. So then after graduating, I did about 6 months of interviewing. Could not get anything. I had actually started the process back in December of trying to land jobs, and couldn't get anything going. So finally, after having no luck, I decided just to take pretty much anything. And I got this contract position, paid $20 an hour to work for Ecolab, and it was basically a glorified data monkey. I just kind of sifted through data, which is a big ETL process where we would take data from clients, and then I would just clean that data day in and day out, hour after hour. And so I knew right away I didn't want to do that job long term. So I kept updating my LinkedIn profile. I just kept keeping it up. And then sure enough, I got lucky, and someone from this company where I work now, Kubota, and HR reached out to me because my profile matched something similar to what they needed. The title was a data analyst position, but I ended up working as a data developer. And that was in the engineering department. And I was there for about 4 years, developed their database. It's on the PostgreSQL backend, and then the front end is in Access. And then while I did that, I did quite a few side projects for different departments. And that's really what those two side projects I did is really what landed me this job that I have now, or helped land that job for data science. So here's my motivation to get me through a lot of my ups and downs. That's my son there in the middle. He just turned 1. My wife, Sarah, and then Katie's the oldest, and then Caroline's on the left, far left. She's 3. That's what gets me through a lot of just not knowing, what's going to happen next. Everyone's going to have that, and so I really encourage everyone to really determine what your motivation is. It can be family, it can be whatever, it can be a path that you want to go on, or just the person you want to be. And I really say fixate on that, because that's going to help you when you face the rejections, or the door's not opening, or whatever it is, the red lights. You're getting a lot of red lights. You got to cling to that, whatever that is. And that's what, again, I know I keep saying this is what pushed me through. So what were the side projects and courses I did? So I basically just took I can't even spell, but I took a Python automation course at Dallas County College. And it was just an 8-week course. This was back in 2018. And I learned how to basically do scripting in Python. I'd already had a foundation of it, but this gave me more capability to work with APIs and with files. And so the service department needed help with the weather API app and with the distance API calculator. So basically, the weather API app was pulling weather in certain areas based off of coordinates, latitude and longitude. And then the distance API was something that basically is pulling, I believe that pulled data from Google's mapping. And it provides a distance between location points for a dealer to get to a customer, etc. And because I did that, it actually was pretty easy to do. And I guarantee you, all of you could have done this. I resolved that issue pretty quickly for them. So that kind of gave me some clout, and they saw that I could do quite a bit of work with in a short period of time. And honestly, it was mostly luck. It just happened to fall in my skill set. So down the road, I had the opportunity. I put a bug in the director's ear. Said, "Hey, I'd love to have this position." It hadn't been created yet, and so they created this position for me. And then I was able to get this job in October of last year. Here's a little bit of what I do day to day. Let me switch over. And forgive me, I've got a lot of screens open. So for one, I do a lot of code mapping. I have to map, or just mapping, not really necessarily code. I'm just pulling up all of the architecture for our department. I'm overseeing this process now. We have all these data sources coming in. One of our biggest data sources is Telematics. Got a lot of data in there, but we are basically reading error codes from machines that are out in the field. So for instance, if you drive a car and you have a flat tire, you're going to have an error code. You're going to pop up on your dashboard, or you're overheating. So in tractors and construction equipment, we have telematics devices that will relay that information back so that we can update the dealer, update the customer. So this is in development right now, and I'm overseeing that part of the build. We've got all these different data sources, pretty large volumes of data sources. This is a Salesforce right here, big key warranty system we have. This is Oracle Service Cloud that we have a lot of our cases in there. We have code mapping, so on and so forth. I won't go through everything, but basically my job is to oversee this data lake build that's eventually going to have AI outputs. So some of that being remote machine monitoring, as I mentioned. A lot of it is the dashboards that we build out. I can show you just a few of those. I can't go too low level. Forgive me for not having that up. Let's see. So here is just a landing page. I can't really show you more than the landing page, but we've built a lot of these out. We just have proprietary information on here. I can't really show you. There's one landing page. Here's another. And these are facing internally, and as far as B2B, and then we also have people in the field that are looking at this data. And so I'm overseeing a lot of this build too. I don't actually get into the nitty gritty of the data on this one, but I'm basically, in my current role, I'm working as a data engineer, and I'm getting all the connections established for everyone. Pretty much the only guy that does the integrations in our departments. I work with 3 different departments. It's warranty, QA, and service. And so that's a lot of what I do. Now, when I have an idea and I want to do a proof of concept, I typically throw it in here into Python. I use Jupyter notebooks, which hopefully some of y'all have used. And then here's my import. I'm going to touch on this later, but Pandas. There's probably a single notebook I use that I don't use Pandas. Okay, so this is similar to what I discussed earlier. We're tracking locations here. It's a lot of data on here, so I can slice this data down. And again, all of you could do this relatively easy. Python makes this so simple. And you've probably done something like this, and you're thinking this is pretty generic. But this is stuff that we do. We build a proof of concept, because Power BI has some limitations as far as overlaying maps. And so I can do this in Python, no problem. I just throw it in there and bam, I've got it. Here's another heat map I built out. And so this is just a standard kind of heat map that you can see. And then this is I prefer this one a little better. It's a clustered heat map. And so you can break down locations better that way. You're not overwhelmed with too much data. Again, that's all Python, Jupyter. And a lot of what I do too is I do a lot of ETL. So if you don't know what that means, it's extract, transform, load. And I take a lot of different data sets from different systems, and I create workflows that kind of just automated scripting. So what this does right here, this particular workflow takes from 4 different sources, and then it integrates it into one source, and it places orders into our ERP system, which is SAP. Basically places up to $2 million worth of orders automatically weekly. And so that was a script that I just created. And again, I learned this from that course, which you probably have already learned. You probably already ahead of me on this process. So that's some of what I do. Let's see if there's anything else I've got handy. Oh, and this is what I do too. I'm sure you've seen this. This is it. This is what I do. I live here. I live in research. I research. So yeah, that's a lot of what I do. I also have to create some proposals from time to time, and I can kind of show you one here. I just created this one. This is for the Azure portal. We're trying to get this set up, and so this is what I do. I gather the requirements. I have the ideal build in mind. I present that to the people that have the power to say yes or no, and they choose to say yes or no. Fortunately, they said yes for us. This is a big win for us. So we're going to be able to build out this entire pipeline in Azure. I'm basically overseeing that process. And I don't know architecture well. I'm trying to learn some of this and taking some more courses on the side. And so that's what I do. I just kind of I identify the need for my company, and then I try to fill that gap by learning what needs to be done. So there's just kind of a game plan of it. Also, Power Automate's pretty cool. Do some automation in there. Here's a batch file I just created yesterday. It's not exciting. Batch file aren't exciting if you haven't seen that, but batching is a big thing. Sorry, I've got a lot of stuff pulled up here. You'll do a lot of batch processing, you'll find, typically, until you can get an API or some type of data gateway established between your systems. So then I'll come in here and make a bat file, if I can find it. Sorry, everything gets rearranged when I'm on one screen. Not seeing it. Oh, there it is. So here it is, very basic. This is a batch file. It's a batch process. And all I'm doing is pulling data from one system, putting it into another system, and then I'm creating backups for it. And so I have that running on a task scheduler. And this is some of the stuff you may learn down the road. It doesn't look exciting, but I guarantee you your company will love it because you're saving them a lot of time, you're automating work, reducing errors, and it's a win for everyone. So that's a little bit of what I do, and I can go into that further later on. But for now, just a few things, a few tips I would like to give you. How's everyone doing? Everyone still awake? Kenzie, do you have some rock and roll you can play to wake everyone up?
What, you need some wake up music?
I just want to make sure everyone's good. We're still.
All right, look alive, everybody. This is how we get into it.
I don't know.
Thanks, Kenzie. Yeah, you're doing great, Kent.
Well,
Great,
I will
okay.
say, Ken, at times your microphone is coming in and out a little bit for me, but I can't really tell what's causing this.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I can hear like 99% of what you're saying.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just stop me if I'm cutting out.
Will do.
Okay.
Okay. So just a few recommendations I have. I would say number one, try to stay consistent. And I know the Tech Academy teaches that. I remember they always encourage us putting in, I believe, how many hours was it, Rick? Was it 40 or something hours a week while we were at the Academy?
Yeah, it's a minimum 40, but we encourage more if you can do it. Right.
Yeah, it was like 50 or something. I can't remember. And that's what I did while I was there. And that's what I do now. You're going to have some bad days, and actually going to have setbacks. Like, I'll just show you right there. There was a setback right here. We had the ice storm, Rick, you mentioned. I did that to my car.
Wow.
It was like snowmageddon over here. I couldn't get anyone to tow that. I was in the middle of nowhere. I had to stay in a hotel. I was supposed to be working. Couldn't get anything done for about a week. And so, you're going to have setbacks, right? So whenever you can, try to bounce back, or even if you can just do 30 minutes a day reading something. I have my phone, I have Medium, and I just read Python stuff all the time. And then also throughout your career, you're going to have a lot of rejections. You're going to have a lot of yellow lights. Like in my last role, when I was in engineering, I was their database developer, but I had developed it by 2018, and then I was on the maintenance prior to that project for about 2 more years. That was pretty boring, not gonna lie, that was pretty boring, but I hung in there. I knew this job was coming down the pipe, and so just sticking at it. I still took courses whenever I could, kept reading, kept pushing myself to do different projects. And that's what's gonna help the most. It's what I recommend. Next thing is Pandas. You gotta know Pandas. Like it's what I do I can show you pretty much every Jupyter notebook. The first thing I import is Pandas. And so just practice that. And if you know that, that's the first step of the process. And the last thing is SQL. Just really keep doing SQL. So some of this is pretty common sense. You say, "Ken, this isn't anything new." I'm like, well, I'm just telling you, this is what we do. This is what I do on a daily basis. I parse SQL. I also work with a Postgres database. I work with a MySQL database. I work with a SQL Server Management Studio, SQL Server database. And then I work with a SQLite database. I do a lot of different things with just different systems, and so SQL is the foundation basically, and Python is what gives you the functionality. One thing I would say, I mentioned it briefly, maybe not. No, I took that out, but I would say simplify. If you are currently stuck between, say, hey, I know Python and I know R, I would say just pick one at this point, because in work, it's better to have depth and breadth. So exposure to another language is good, but if you are on the fence, you're like, I don't know which language to go with. I'm just going to tell you right now, I would go with Python, because unless you're coming from an academic background, Python works in DevOps, it works in scripting, it works in ETL, it works in visualizations, it works in machine learning, it works in AI, it works in all the different facets. R, it also works in, you can do development with it, web development. So R, on the other hand, it has some of that functionality, but it's more of an academic background. I'm not bashing R. If you are fluent in R, keep going with it by all means. But if you're on the fence, I would say simplify. Just try to create some projects, gain some momentum, and stick with one over the other. Then the only other thing I was going to say, you might be wondering, well, I'm not doing any math at this point. I'm not really doing any AI, machine learning. So here's one thing to consider. When you get into a position and they hire you as a data scientist, which they did for me, I'm not technically doing any data science. I just showed you that. All I'm doing is, I'm basically like a data developer, data engineer, somewhat of an architect, but I'm not doing any AI or ML. And the reason being is our company isn't built for that yet. So I'm building the foundation with the company, and we're doing it together, right? Then next year is when we're going to start rolling out the AI and the machine learning. And so something to consider, that you may not jump in, say you get the position, you may not jump right into it. Yeah, you may have to kind of build the system before it's able to do your job. And so that's pretty much all I have. I know that was somewhat brief, but that means I have more time for questions. I can hopefully provide specific feedback to anyone.
Yeah, we had a question right at the jump from Van, and Van asked, what is the career opportunities for data science grads in the sports industry?
Sorry, let me read the question. So what is the...
Yeah, are there career opportunities for data science grads in the sports industry that you know of?
In sports, okay. Most definitely, yeah. If you want, I can show you a cool project, but there's a bunch of opportunities. So what I wanted to do is automate AI on tennis biomechanics. I coach tennis, right? And so I can show you some stuff, but if you want to go that route, I guarantee you there's opportunities. I can't speak for it. Like I don't have any inroads to sports right now as far as at that level. But one thing, even just building out tools that people need in sports. One of them I want to build out is, how to automate, how to learn how to hit a serve by biomechanics. It do some pretty cool data points. It identifies points in your body with AI and where that technique needs to be. So yeah, I mean, that translates into any type of sport: running, track, basketball, right? I mean, so the need is there. It's just figuring out your niche. A lot of people think data science is just like, I'm just going to take large data sets and work with it. And a lot of it's just, no, you're taking video analysis even and finding ways to improve that. So yeah, if you want to go that route, I totally would recommend just start building up projects. And afterwards, I can send you one that is really cool. This one girl did. She worked for Google, and she just built this really cool biomechanical analysis with AI. And so she used NLP. No, she knew what she used. It's been a while since I looked at it. I forget what library she used. But yeah, the need is there.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the really cool things about data science and tech in general is that you can kind of bring it to any industry that you want, because everything we do produces data these days. So I do see also that Neil said that they have at least 4 questions. So Neil, if you want to unmute yourself and ask some questions, go for it.
Yeah, I always have tons of questions.
Great, we love that.
Oh my gosh, you were there last week. I tried to ask one question and the presenter shut me down so quick I didn't know what to do. So anyway, so I do have 4. Kent, I like seeing your background because it felt familiar to me. Like it took a while for me to find my direction, and I feel like developing is the direction I want to go in now. And so I talk to a lot of people about how they got into developing, and I hear a lot of like I didn't know what I was doing and I just sort of stumbled into it. But I have a hard time believing that you just sort of stumble into developing, because I feel like it takes a certain type of person to be able to stare at a screen and kind of comprehend all the tech stuff. So what I'm most curious about is what was your tech knowledge base when you first started at the Tech Academy?
Good question. Yeah. And to your earlier point, I didn't just jump into development. It took me a lot of soul searching. I did a lot of just, when I was a coach, I would go late at night to a Waffle House and I would read these books. It was like questioning yourself of like, what do you want to do with your life? And questions I never asked myself. And then I realized I wanted to do this. And so to the second part of what you said, wait, what was it? Wait, remind me again.
I just sort of wanted to know like your knowledge base. Like my curiosity just sort of developed over time as I was doing other things, and I was just like, hey, what's that? Or what's going on here? Or how did you do that? And I built it over time. And then as you learn one thing and you branch off and you go, well, how does that work? And how does that work? And so there is a lot of, especially like us nerds like to use certain terminology that other people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I just feel like you have to build up at least a little bit of a knowledge base just to be able to communicate with other sort of techies. And so I'm just curious, like how much did you know going into, becoming a developer, and like how sort of difficult was it to communicate with other people who are already doing it? And everyone's using this phrase now, imposter syndrome. And so I just curious what you knew when you were like, yeah, I'm going to be a developer. How much did you know?
Yeah, I mean, here I just pulled this up because this is where I started Excel. When I did oil and gas, I just did Excel for hours, and that was way back in like let's say 2010. And so I did kind of jumped into the VBA a little bit, and then to the logic behind I guess it's called DAX. I don't know what they call it in Excel, but the language, when you do a function, it equals if this then that, right? That's what I would do for hours, and I just like, oh, this is pretty cool. So when I was doing my soul searching later on, that's when I realized, okay, this is what I want to do. And so I really just came in with literally just Excel. That was it. I didn't know HTML, didn't know CSS, didn't know JavaScript. And I came in completely fresh to the academy. And so people look down on Excel, but you can do a lot with it. I wouldn't recommend it being your long-term build, but I mean, you can get a lot of proof of concept stuff down, and small data sets, you can do a lot with it. So that was all I knew. That was my framework, and yeah.
That's reassuring because you sound now like you obviously have a strong knowledge base and you have a career and all that kind of stuff. And I basically was there as well, where I was working for an accounting firm and just started playing with the VBA, and it was like, wow, that was really amazing when I ran the script and it was working. And then I was bragging to someone else about it, and they said, well, you should try Python. And then so now I'm here. And so the follow-up question on that would be, what course did you take with the Tech Academy?
So I did their developer. They didn't have data science. And then when I went through it, Python was an elective, I guess, because it was C#.NET was the emphasis. And so I didn't take any Python at the Tech Academy. I had to take that at the community college later on. And so I probably had the option to take it at the Tech Academy, but I was trying to get through quickly so that I could get back to my family. I knocked out the required coursework only, and then which probably was a bad choice. I probably should have stayed longer, because would have had more skill, more confidence going into interviews. But hindsight, right?
So I have 2 more questions, but I don't want to hog everyone's time. So if anyone else has a question, I have a line of questioning here that I prepared.
Go for it, Neil. We've got plenty of time. So
Okay.
go ahead and
Neil.
ask your questions, and I'm sure they'll help other people think of questions too. And I'll keep an eye on the chat box, so you're all good.
Yeah, because Kent, you're just playing right into my questions. I have my follow-ups ready, and it's perfect. So thank you. So the next one was 2 questions, or I guess they're sort of equal. So the first one would be, can you talk a little bit about the work-life balance as a developer in the beginning, because you are trying to learn so much, and there's a lot of things that you have to sort of catch up to become, to even get a job. There's a lot of hours put in, and I like working, but I tend to then sort of burn myself out a little bit, and I'm trying to pull it back to only work 40 hours or just study 40 hours or whatever. So can you talk a little bit about, in the beginning, when you're really starting to gain some momentum as a developer, how are you balancing like just comprehending all this new knowledge and having to turn it off to then go, play with the kids or whatever?
Right. Yeah. Good question. And I would say on this one, to each their own. Everyone's going to have to determine what works best for them. I will say a good starting point. And when I was at the Tech Academy, they had, I think, a reference to a blog, and it was John Somnes. Maybe you've heard of him. He's pretty well known. But he had a key thing that he said, and it was, I know you've heard of the Pomodoro Technique. And the Pomodoro Technique, you set the increments as you want. I typically do like 25 minutes on, maybe 5 to 10 minutes off. And then he said he always recommends don't do more than 10 of those a day. So that doesn't seem like a lot of time. So what's 10 times 25 minutes? It's not a lot of time, but that's your peak focal point, right? And so if you're really getting heavy into the weeds of learning, don't go more than 10 homos, or that's like what, 5 hours a day, right? So we'll say 4.5 hours. If you're doing heavy duty learning, because then the next day you're going to feel it. And I can attest to that, because by Friday I'm done and I can't do anything hardly sometimes, so it's better to pace yourself. And better to have 8 pomos than 4 one day, right? And then, so you want to have that consistency. And so it's about fine tuning it for yourself and keep practicing. So work-life balance is tricky, but I will say to everyone, you have to love to learn. You have to love it. You're not going to stop once you leave the academy, especially as a data scientist, because this field is still evolving. People look what I'm doing. I'm not doing your standard data science position. And so you've got to keep learning and love to learn. And one thing I would recommend is, if you haven't heard of learning, Barbara Oakley. Have you heard of Barbara Oakley? Anyone? That opened my eyes to how to handle very difficult learning material. And it's, I'll send a link in the chat. Can't recommend her enough. And I did one of her courses. You can do a free course, and it steps you through everything. And that just opened my eyes. Like, okay, yeah, you're in a tough field. It's very tough and it's competitive. And so where do you start? And she just breaks it down. Like, you have these different states called diffuse mode and focus mode. And so you got to balance those two. And she steps you through how to do that, so you're not just pulling your hair out and burning out. You send that.
Yeah, I'm no problem there. I'm like obsessed now, but I also taught myself accounting at the library, so I'm kind of I think I'll fit in as a weirdo just fine. But so my last question is again, kind of considering your background and where you came from and stuff. When you're going through your job search and you're going through these interviews, I'm curious how you reassured potential employers that developing wasn't just another thing that you were trying out again, because similar to me, like, you didn't have this linear education. It doesn't, from what I can tell anyway, like, you were doing tennis and then you're working as a server and all these things. Like, I'm worried about going for an interview and them going like, oh, is this just another thing for you? how do we know you're going to stay long term? So can you talk a little bit about after you graduated Tech Academy and how you just sort of reassured them that no, you know what you're doing. This is not just a phase. Yeah.
Right. So my first job out of the academy was a contract role, and they didn't care. They paid me $20 an hour. So if I left, they weren't gonna, whatever. So, so for me getting this job, I don't know. It wasn't that hard to convince them. So it depends on how you get yourself into the industry. If you're starting with a high level paying position, you're gonna have to convince them that you're gonna stick around. But I didn't start that way. I started with the lower, like I just worked my way up, and so I guess in order to convince them that, you might have to just figure out something. And one thing that helps is saying, okay, ask questions like, okay, where do you see while you're in that interview, ask them, where do you see me in this company in 2 years? Or where do you see me in this department? Or, do the long-term stuff, like throw that out there. And here's what I see in 2 to 3 years. And that sells them on, oh, he's here for the long haul. He's not here for the hit it and quit it and, make money and move on. So
I think I'm kind of curious about, how I'm going to compete with someone who has like a computer science degree. My approach has always just been like, put me in the same room as someone else who's going to outwork everyone. I did it with accounting and all that. So, but that's kind of my worry is, now I think programming is a little bit different because you can build up a portfolio in GitHub or whatnot. But I guess I was just kind of curious and a little bit afraid of, sitting down and trying to reassure someone like, I promise I'm, obsessed with this, and then how do I compete with someone who's got like a 4-year degree in computer science and all that stuff. And so I was wondering if you maybe encountered, that competition between yourself and someone who has a more, formal background.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of once you get inside the company like I did. I had the interview for this position, and I told them, I said, hey, look, you're gonna have candidates that are smarter than me, better than me, but I know this company, I know what you need, and I've already shown you what I can do. And so that gave me a track record within the company, and that kind of helped sell me on this position. And so yeah, that's just sort of and one thing I wouldn't be too worried about the time issue anymore. People turn over so quick now. In our company, we have so much turnover, and these are high-level positions. And that's the trend now. And people are moving on in 2 years or less. So I think that's less of a fear. And depending on where you're going, I don't know. But I wouldn't worry too much about longevity. At least, I've sat on several interviews. I've led interviews, and if I'm hiring you for something, I have a specific project in mind for you. And all I'm doing is seeing if I know you can do that project. After that, we'll see. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm focused on. And that's a lot of time from a business standpoint. That's what they're focused on.
Did you have a GitHub portfolio when you started interviewing?
I did, but the thing is, they don't even know. They didn't even know to look at it. Like, it didn't matter. So, like, it just depends on the company. Like, we're not in a tech company right now. So if you're going to a tech company, yeah, you got to have it. But people I had it all set up, they didn't even touch it. Like, so it just depends, right? It depends on the industry.
Did you look for data scientists? Last question, I promise. Did you, in your job search, were you looking for data scientists, or like, because you weren't going towards tech? And I know Kubota contacted you, but just wondering, like, where do you start your search if you're not going toward tech, I guess? Last question.
So yeah, I started off as a BI analyst. I always try to pick roles that align with it, right? So BI analyst, business intelligence analyst, that was my job at Ecolab. And then I got hired on here as a data analyst. And so they're sort of like segue positions that get you to data science. I will say it's going to be hard coming out of the gate, jumping right into data science. With an accounting background, that could help, right? If you got an academic mathematics background, which I didn't have, it's very helpful to have. You prove that you can work with numbers and that you can handle a lot of information. And so that's a feather in your cap, and everyone's going to come from different spots. So, and you're smarter than me, I can tell you that, Neil. Like, I don't have a math background, and so I don't know where everyone else is in this meeting where you sit. Just don't focus too much on your weaknesses. Just focus on what you have and just keep building on it, because it's really the driving force is your passion, right? Motivation is what keeps you on your trajectory. Like my motivation is my family. And, but your passion is what drives you. You want to keep researching on it when no one else wants to. You want to finish this project because, heck, you want to prove to yourself that you can do it. And then that leads to another project and another project. And so don't fixate on your weaknesses too much. Yeah, you got to improve them, but you have more to offer than you think. And that's what you have to realize what that is, and you have to sell that to the company when you go in for the interview. So you might have to do some soul searching. You might have to actually, I even emailed friends like, hey, where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? And they told me, you know, and so you like, don't, you know, tell them not to be too blunt. Like, don't call me an asshole, right? But hey, let's make this work, you know. And so
I just hear other like developers or students and all that. I hear them talk and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I built a program before I even started anything. I just did it on my own just because I was curious. I wanted to make the screen take in input and say yes or no. Next thing you know, I built the whole thing. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, I'm so good at this. I'm so great. And then I got started with the Tech Academy and started getting involved in the community a bit. And the stuff they're talking about, I'm like, I should probably park cars because I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I pulled that off. So it's just a matter of when I hear that imposter syndrome the phrase sort of comes up a lot that, you know, yeah, when I hear other people speak, I'm like, I don't know where I thought I knew stuff. And then I hear other people talk and I'm just like, I don't know anything. So that's why I was kind of curious about what your background was, because I get sort of intimidated when the people are referring to things that there's a lot of like acronyms like API and your CRM and your blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my, I need a notepad. So.
Yeah, don't worry about all that. That's just domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is the quickest thing to pick up. So don't worry about that. Yeah, try not to be intimidated. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I just want to say those are really great questions, Neil. And also wanted to point out that through the Tech Academy's program, you will totally build up a GitHub and we'll force you to put it on your resume so people will see it. And if you're nervous just kind of about talking the talk and walking the walk, I would definitely recommend anyone currently taking the Tech Academy program to start doing the weekly roundtables as soon as you feel like you can with your study schedule. Those are hosted by Forrest, and you do a coding challenge. You answer interview questions, both technical and soft skill questions. And I feel like that's a really great way to just get more comfortable talking tech. And, you know, I used to do them and I would never actually do the coding challenge because I didn't feel like I had time. So don't feel like you can't participate if you haven't done the challenges either. So that's just kind of a side note. But I do think we have another hand up from Terrence. So Terrence, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, go for it.
Yeah, it was really just sort of what I put up in chat. I was wondering, you showed some Jupyter notebooks that you were working with, but I was wondering if you have any other environments that you're doing development in. I'd done a little Python with Spider, but I wasn't really happy with it. So now I've been looking into VS Code. I was wondering if you had any experience with any of that.
Yeah, VS Code is really good. I don't use it personally. VS Code's good because you can do a lot of really seamless integrations with a lot of stuff. I mean, it's great. I honestly, if I were starting over, I'd probably start with VS Code. I personally use Sublime. You're supposed to pay for it. I'm sorry, I haven't paid for it. I'm a bad person, but it's like you can download it free. I'm not doing anything illegal. I just haven't paid for it, and so. But that's what I use, and it's got a little bit of a dialogue here, console, but I can jump into pretty much anything at this point, you know. But I say most of my coding I do is in Sublime. Sublime is like a beast. I mean, you can do some, when you have, so I manage one database that's 40,000 lines of code, and you got to do a mass update. You throw it in Sublime, and you can do these really, really quick updates. It's hard for me to go into right now, but it's just, man, I love it. Sublime is great. And I'm not saying it's the one-all stuff, but like Visual Studio is very good too. The only thing with Visual Studio, I remember I started with it, it's just sort of, at first it's kind of clunky. Like there's a lot of things you got to set up. Sublime, you're just up and running right away. and it's pretty lightweight. I love lightweights. Like I don't do Anaconda because it's pretty heavy, but some people want to do Anaconda. That's fine. It's a lot of bulk. I just need the basics. I install my libraries as I go, and yeah, I mean this API stuff here. Yeah, just kind of. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to show you one more thing.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So.
Isn't Pycharm another big one?
Yes, Pycharm is good. I like Pycharm as well. They're both good, I think. But the thing with Pycharm is you can get the community edition. Anything above that, you got to pay for. And so I'm always about free and open source, because when you're especially when you don't have a job, you got to find a way to produce projects with like no budget. And so everything I do is as cheap as it gets, as long as it's good. I don't, you'd be surprised that the equivalent applications that you have, IDEs, everything, the interfaces, right? There's really good stuff out there. I think I got all the questions.
Yeah, I think there's another hand up. I think Adam has his hand up, or sorry, Adam has their hand up. So feel free to unmute yourself, or if that was an accident, no big deal.
Yeah, no, I did have a quick question.
Sweet.
So I'll just admit, I'm pretty early in my like programming adventure, I'll call it. I've done some little self-learn type things, some LinkedIn learning type classes. I did take one Python class at a little local community. But one thing that I've just tend to hit brick walls so often is, there's such a vast array of technologies out there. Obviously, all the different languages and just, again, there's so much, and how to link it all together. I feel like, how do you not get overwhelmed with that? Like when you hit those walls, right? Like, I mean, it's inevitable. You hit those walls. Like, what do you do to kind of dig yourself back out of that and get back moving forward? And secondly, like, how did you really piece it all together? Like, really, when was your aha in like how all these technologies fit together?
I'm not gonna lie, it took a long time. It took, I would say, at least 3 years before things started to click. And so, I mean, you'll click in one avenue, let's say VBA, right? Because that's my background. So I came in and I could do VBA a little bit, and then I could roll with that. But VBA, honestly, it's on its way out. It's not supported by Microsoft as much, right? You got to move on. So, yeah, that is the hardest thing, and I wanted to reiterate that a lot in the presentation. You gotta simplify. Don't go off on rabbit trails, and that's why if you're torn between Python and R, just choose one and go with it. And then the main thing that's going to help you is do projects, even if they're small, like just small little things, but complete them, and then say, oh wow, so I did that. That gives you that momentum, and it gives you the kind of more depth. And then go on to the next project, and you'll see that some of that overlaps. But do not, okay, one thing that's really bad is Pluralsight. Pluralsight is amazing as far as wanting to learn, but they got a million avenues. You got to limit your focus. So that's what Tech Academy is good about. They don't overwhelm you with too much to learn. So yeah, what I do is I just track stuff. If I find an article that's really cool, I built this little clunky thing, right? And I just track, here's all my learning stuff, all my learning that I want to learn. I just throw it in this database so I can look at it later, right? It's nothing great, but hey, I can track everything. And so.
And did you say you built that database?
Yeah, I built this. It's just Access.
That's so cool.
It's almost like a CRM, but it's just like, it just works for me. I track all my projects, everything I do in here.
And what a great project on its own to like learn how to like do more data engineering stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know SQL to do this. You have to know VBA. So like I can track emails, PowerPoints, everything. And so it just centralizes everything in one location. And so that's one thing I would say, like if you got something that's cool, but you know it's going to pull you away, just throw it in some repository and say, I'll come back to it later. But keep on whatever you're at. Hey, check this out. Look, I wanted to show you all this. Data set. Please, please, please research data set. I can show you something really quick and really cool. You can build an entire SQLite database instantly without doing anything other than like one line of code. And so data set, look that up. I don't know if I have the time to show you, but I mean, it's phenomenal. Like that's an easy win for everyone. Data set.
That's super cool.
You can convert CSV files into multiple CSV into one SQLite data set instantly, and then you can pull it up and use it. And so please research this guy. He's the guy who did he helped build was it Django or Flask? He's that guy that built that. He built this data set and it's open source.
I do think we have a couple other questions in the chat box.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No worries, that's my job. Okay, let me see. Let me try and find the next one. I think Ricardo Lopez is the next one, and they asked, Mr. Kent, did you need to take supplementary statistics classes to help with your data science job?
Yes, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm actually taking 2 courses right now, not math yet. So again, I focus on where we are as a company, but I'm also looking ahead. So right now I'm taking a virtual machine course and database course, and right after this I'm taking 2 math courses. It's through Cornell, and they have some online courses that my company's paying for, and then that's going to lead me into a machine learning certification that has math. And so I need to learn linear algebra. I'm very basic on math. I guarantee you most of y'all know more math than I do. And so, but yes, to answer your question, yes, I need to take it. I haven't taken it. I need to take several courses. So.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. I've definitely kind of looked into learning more statistics myself for data science. Jonah, for the roundtables, I put in Forrest's email to get on that email list, but I believe they happen Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Pacific time. And Priyanka asked, not related to the database field, but is it better to learn Python in depth or C# when it comes to software development?
Yeah, and that's a tricky question. It depends on where you want to go with your career. C# is great for like big cities like Dallas. They love C#. It's the Microsoft stack because banks are convinced that Microsoft is more secure. So if you know C#, you'll get hired. I personally love Python. It's a lot simpler syntax. I feel like you can do more with it, especially with AI and ML. But C# is a really, really good language. So it just depends on what route you want to go.
And then I believe we have one more question in the chat, which is from GS. They ask, what is your work-life balance hours? How many hours are you working on code stuff per day, per week?
So I code every day during work, right? Now the learning on the side, I typically spend like a Monday evening. I have to stay late at work till about 9 o'clock at night. But my work schedule is like 40-hour work week. So that's my work schedule. And then at night on Mondays I work, and then on Saturdays I'll do coursework. So I typically do maybe, I would say probably at least just depends, maybe 6 to 8 hours of coursework a week. And some of it I even do during work because it applies to the project I'm on. So what I try to do, let me just recommend this, try to integrate, try to stack. So once you get into a job, take courses that apply to the project you're on. So you're still learning and they're paying for it and it helps them. And so you don't always have to do 2 different things at once. So all my education, they pay for. So you learn how to like say, hey, this is why I'm taking this course. This is going to help the business. And I maybe do it during work hours sometimes. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And I believe that's all the open questions right now. So if anyone else has any burning questions, or if I missed something, please speak up and let us know.
Ken, I do have a high-level data analytics question. Why are there not any Waffle Houses on the West Coast?
There are not any Waffle Houses on the West Coast?
No, and it's an atrocity.
Seriously? Man,
There's one in
I don't know.
Denver. Was there one in Denver?
Oh.
There was one in St. Louis. I used to volunteer to take people to the airport because it was really close to the Waffle House, and then I'd go eat Waffle House by myself afterwards.
Yeah, I love Waffle House. What do y'all have as an equivalent there? What's the alternative?
Denny's?
Oh, Denny's will put you to sleep.
Kind of. Yeah, just for those who don't know, there's a Waffle House like on every block in the eastern part of the U.S., and they're hugely popular.
It's from Georgia, just like me.
Yeah, they're great. I love them.
Yeah, if I could have any janky magic power, it would be to turn every Denny's into a Waffle House. But, oh yeah, someone mentioned Sherry's too. Sherry's is a thing out here.
Oh, okay. Sherry's.
Maybe we should build a data set.
Do it.
I think we should.
And then we can compare and contrast, and then we can see if we can create a machine learning algorithm that if you smear hash browns on it, it can tell you where it came from.
I mean, come on, it's Portland. It's like you have to have your sort of artisan brunch location. You can't.
Yeah, but what about 3 in the morning? What about when it's 3 in the morning and you're out doing bad stuff?
There used to be like a waffle place.
A hot cake house?
Yeah, something like that. It was like on the inner southeast. And like, it seemed like a lot of strippers went there after they got off work.
Because there weren't any other options.
Maybe you can get voodoo waffles.
Donut sandwiches. Well, I would love to open the floor if anyone has relevant questions. Doesn't want to hear me talk about food and beards and Avatar. But we are around 2 o'clock, so, if folks have somewhere to be, feel free to go be there. Lots of thank yous to you, Kent, in the chat box.
Yeah, thank you all, and good luck to everyone. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And so yeah, just keep your head up. We do have one position that is just picking. It's going to be a temp position that's going. My boss has submitted it, so it's going to take a few months before they open it. But that might be a good opportunity. But you'd have to either be in the area. I don't know if they'll let me do full. They might be able to do full remote on that one. I'll ask. So I work for a pretty conservative company. It's Japanese owned, so they like people in house. But with COVID, everything's different now.
Actually, on that note, can anyone sort of comment on? I know things have changed with COVID, but the remote work, because again, some other developers that I've talked to or whatever, they look for jobs outside of their area because programming can be done remotely, and there's a lot of jobs in San Francisco, where I'm from. And I guess my dream would be to get hired by a company in the Mecca that is San Francisco for developing, and then just work remotely, and maybe they'll fly me down there. So they'll fly me down there. I'll give them an update, and they can send me back home and pay for all of it. Does anyone have any sort of? Does anyone know about like how much remote work there is when it comes to your average developer?
I know there's a lot more now. It's all over. I mean, digital nomads is a big thing. If you haven't heard of that, people travel the world and develop. If you can get the San Francisco job, that'd be great. I know it's a really competitive market, but yeah, I know they're open to remote work. I mean,
I also found some developers built a newsletter and website, kind of job board thing. It's called Remotists, like remote ISTS. Here, I'll put that in there. I'm not sure. I'm putting it in the chat. I'm not sure if it's a .org or .com. I think it might be a .org, but you can tell them which area of development you are interested in, and they'll send you an email. They also just have a board you can look at, but they have a whole data science section too, and they send me emails every week with a huge list of remote jobs because they're pulling them from all over the world. So it's out there. You know, COVID cracked the whole remote thing wide open. And I think a lot of companies realize that it's more affordable for them to actually not have everyone come into the office all the time.
Yeah, things have definitely changed with remote work.
Before, we used to kind of tell people, you want to work remotely, maybe not your first job. Now, you know, if that's your goal, it's definitely something that can happen.
Doesn't that make like security like even more important now, because you know the traffic or whatever going from these remote workers, again, still kind of looking for a direction. What I'm just wondering if sort of, I think internet security and more remote everything is going to be even more relevant these days now, because people are working remotely. Everyone's very willy-nilly when it comes to their information and their passwords and all that stuff. And so I'm just wondering, like,
Cloud.
maybe, yeah, like
cloud, like a lot of people moving on to the cloud. So getting cloud certification to add, you know, that's the cloud is typically more secure than a network you're creating yourself or the kind of space that you're virtually existing on. And like whether it's AWS, Azure, or I can't remember, or what the other one is, but
GCP, Google Cloud Platform. I will say of those three, the easiest to learn is GCP, because they give you a year free subscription. AWS gives you a few months, and Azure is very stingy. They only give you like a month. So if you want to do some trials, like build your own stuff, I would recommend GCP, Google Cloud Platform. But yeah, she's right. Kenzie, you're right. Cloud is, I mean, that's what I'm having to work with right now, Azure. So,
well, I think all business infrastructure is moving to the cloud. Just it saves the company so much money, not having to have the infrastructure on site.
yeah, definitely. It's more secure if it's managed elsewhere too. I mean, Azure, they do a lot of security on it, so I'd rather be in their hands. But we have to oversee it though.
All righty.
what language is going to be, what programming languages would be best for managing those security certificates and stuff? Does anyone know?
Python.
Oh, good.
Python's really good. It's very good for DevOps, ML ops, Python. That's what, I mean, I love it.
Well, that was really good, Kent. We appreciate it.
Yes, Ken, thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, glad to help. And good luck to everyone. And
yeah,
if you haven't been to Waffle House, you gotta hit up Waffle House sometime.
Hash browns scattered, covered, and smothered.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the move.
Yeah, they got lots in Texas, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us as well. Thank you so much, Kent, for being here and sharing your time and your experience with us. We really appreciate it. We get so much out of it. And thanks to all of our students in our community for joining us and asking questions and contributing to the conversation. I'll put my email in here just in case anyone wants to reach out to me with questions about Tech Talks, or I can direct any questions to Kent. And I hope y'all have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. And come back to the next, what do we have next week? We've got Max Crimson, not Crimson, Crisman, who's going to be focusing on getting your LinkedIn profile set up real nice for the job placement, job search and job placement. So don't miss that one. We look forward to seeing y'all next week. And thanks again.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. Really good to see you, Kent. Really good to see you, Kent. We'll chat soon.
Definitely. Yeah.